The city was quiet, except for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional flickering of neon signs. It had rained earlier, leaving the streets damp and glistening under the dim glow of streetlights. Ethan Carter drove slowly through the nearly deserted roads, exhausted after yet another long, uneventful day. Lately, life had been nothing but a series of dull routines. Work, home, sleep, repeat. Ever since his divorce, everything felt empty. His apartment, his life, his purpose. Even Chicago, once exciting, now felt like just another cold, indifferent place. That's when he saw it. A dark shape, barely visible near the curb. At first he thought it was trash, an old coat or maybe some abandoned furniture. But as his headlights passed over it, something caught his eye. A paw. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He slowed down, gripping the steering wheel tightly. It's not your problem, just keep driving, he told himself. You don't have time for this. But something inside him refused to look away. Pulling over, he took a deep breath and stepped out. The cold air hit him immediately, but that wasn't what sent a chill down his spine. Lying on the wet pavement was a German shepherd. Its fur matted, its body still, its breathing barely noticeable. "Hey, buddy," Ethan murmured, kneeling beside the dog. Up close, it was worse than he thought. The dog was hurt, its ribs painfully visible under its muddy coat. Its eyes, barely open, flickered with exhaustion and something else. Fear? Desperation? Ethan glanced around. The laundromat across the street was still open, and a few people stood outside a gas station a block away. Someone must have seen this dog before him. Yet no one had stopped. His chest tightened. People always turned away, just like his friends had when he needed them, just like he had almost done now. With a sigh, Ethan pulled off his jacket and draped it over the dog. The shepherd barely reacted, only letting out a faint whimper. That sound did something to him. Without thinking, he gently slid his arms under the dog, lifting it off the cold ground. It was heavier than expected, but he didn't care. The dog trembled slightly in his grasp, pressing weakly against his chest. "You're not dying tonight," Ethan muttered. He had no plan, no idea where to go or what to do. All he knew was that he wasn't leaving this dog behind. Ethan carefully carried the injured dog to his car, his arms straining under its weight. The German shepherd let out a weak whimper, its body shivering against him. "It's okay, buddy," Ethan muttered, trying to sound reassuring. "I got you." He carefully placed the dog on the back seat, using his jacket as a makeshift cushion. As he shut the door and slid into the driver's seat, panic set in. What now? His first instinct was to call a vet, but it was past midnight. Most clinics would be closed. Emergency vet, there has to be one nearby. With one hand on the wheel, he grabbed his phone and searched for the nearest 24-hour animal hospital. His stomach dropped when he saw the location, 12 miles away. "Damn it," he muttered. Glancing in the rearview mirror, he saw the shepherd's eyes barely open, its breathing shallow. Time was running out. Without hesitation, Ethan floored the gas pedal. His old Ford groaned in protest, but he didn't care. Traffic was light at this hour, allowing him to speed through the streets without much resistance. "Stay with me, buddy," he muttered. "Just hold on." The dog didn't respond. His mind raced. What had happened to this poor animal? A hit and run? Had someone abandoned it? The thought made his blood boil. How could people be so heartless? As he approached a red light, he hesitated for only a second before deciding. Screw it. He glanced both ways, then sped through. He'd deal with a ticket later. Minutes passed like hours. Every bump in the road made the dog let out the faintest of whimpers, each one twisting a knife deeper into Ethan's chest. Come on, just a little further." Finally, the neon sign of the Chicago Emergency Vet Clinic came into view. He barely stopped the car before jumping out and yanking the back door open. "I need help," he shouted as he rushed inside, the limp dog cradled in his arms. A receptionist looked up, startled, then quickly signaled to the back. Within seconds, a vet and 2 assistants rushed over with a stretcher. "What happened?" the vet asked, already assessing the dog's injuries. I I found him on the street, Ethan stammered, breathless. I don't know how long he's been like this. The vet nodded, her face calm but focused. We'll take it from here. As they placed the dog on the stretcher and wheeled him away, Ethan took a shaky breath. Now came the hardest part. Waiting. Ethan paced the cold, sterile waiting room of the emergency vet clinic, his nerves on edge. The harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the scent of antiseptic filled the air. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. He hated waiting. Every few minutes, he glanced toward the double doors the vet had disappeared behind, hoping for an update. The receptionist had tried to reassure him. The doctor will let you know as soon as there's news, but it wasn't enough. His mind kept replaying the image of the dog lying broken on the street. That helpless look in its eyes. The way its body had trembled against him. He clenched his fists, his frustration growing. What kind of person leaves an animal like that? Ethan sat down but immediately stood back up, unable to stay still. His phone buzzed in his pocket, probably work emails or some pointless notification. He ignored it. Nothing mattered right now except that dog surviving. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Every time the doors swung open, his heart jumped. But each time it was another vet tech calling for a different pet owner. Then finally, Mr. Carter? Ethan turned so fast he nearly tripped over his own feet. The vet, a woman in her late 40s with kind but tired eyes, approached him. How is he? Ethan asked, bracing for the worst. The vet sighed, wiping her hands on her scrubs. He's stable, but it was close. He's severely dehydrated, malnourished, and suffered blunt force trauma to his ribs. The leg injury. It's a fracture, but not beyond repair. Ethan's stomach twisted. Will he make it? The vet gave a small, reassuring smile. With the right care, yes. But he's got a long recovery ahead. Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. Relief flooded through him, but it was quickly followed by another realization. What happens now? He asked. The vet hesitated. Well, normally we'd transfer him to a shelter or a rescue organization once he's stable. But given his condition, he'll need extensive care for weeks. And, to be honest, shelters are overwhelmed. A dog in his state. Well, his chances of being adopted wouldn't be great. Ethan frowned. So you're saying? She met his gaze. He'll need someone willing to foster him. At least until he's strong enough for adoption. Ethan swallowed hard. He hadn't planned on this. He had barely been able to take care of himself lately. Was he really in a position to take in a dog, especially one that needed so much care? But then he remembered the way the shepherd had looked at him. The way it had trusted him, even in its weakest moment. Could he really walk away now? Ethan sat in silence, staring at the vet as her words settled in. Foster him? The idea should have terrified him. He could barely manage his own life. How was he supposed to take care of a dog that needed round-the-clock attention? And yet, he couldn't bring himself to say no. He hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. What would that involve? The vet's expression softened. He'll need a calm, quiet space to recover. Pain medication, special food to help him gain weight, and gentle rehab for his leg once he's strong enough. But the biggest thing he needs... She paused. Someone who won't give up on him. Ethan swallowed hard. He thought of the dog, lying battered and broken on the street. How many people had walked past and done nothing? How easy it would have been for him to do the same. But he hadn't. I'll do it, he said before he could talk himself out of it. The vet blinked in surprise. Are you sure? It's a big commitment. Ethan nodded, feeling a strange mix of anxiety and determination. Yeah, I'm sure. The vet smiled. All right, I'll get the paperwork started. He'll need to stay here a few more days for monitoring, but after that, he's yours to take home. Ethan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. What had he just gotten himself into? A few days later, Ethan returned to the clinic, his nerves on edge. The staff had prepped him with care instructions, medication schedules, and what to expect, but none of it felt real until now. Then, a vet tech walked in, gently leading the German shepherd on a leash. Ethan's breath caught. The dog was thinner than he remembered, its fur still patchy and rough. Its injured leg was wrapped in a soft cast, and it moved carefully, every step slow and uncertain. But the moment their eyes met, something shifted. The dog hesitated, then, with effort, took a step closer. "Hey, buddy," Ethan murmured, kneeling down. He reached out slowly, giving the dog a chance to pull away. Instead, the shepherd sniffed his hand, then, after a long moment, gently nudged his palm with its nose. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. The vet tech smiled. "Looks like he remembers you." Ethan swallowed. "Yeah, I guess he does." The dog still had a long way to go. He was weak, fragile, and wary. But for the first time since that night, Ethan saw something new in his eyes. Hope. And in that moment, Ethan knew this wasn't just about saving the dog. Maybe, just maybe, the dog was saving him too. The drive home was quiet. Ethan kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting the dog, whom the vet had temporarily named Shep, to panic or whimper. But the shepherd just lay there, exhausted, his head resting on Ethan's crumpled jacket from the night they first met. Every so often, Shep's amber eyes flicked up to meet Ethan's in the mirror. He didn't move much, but there was something different in his gaze now. Less fear, more curiosity. Ethan cleared his throat. "All right, buddy. I'm not gonna lie. I have no idea what I'm doing here. But we'll figure it out, yeah." Shep blinked, then closed his eyes again. The first night was rough. Ethan had set up a small sleeping area for Shep in the corner of his apartment, an old comforter and a borrowed dog bed from a friend. But the moment he turned off the lights and got into his own bed, the whining started. Low at first, then louder. Ethan groaned, rubbing his face. "Dude, come on. I need sleep too." But when he got up and saw Shep's trembling form, curled into the smallest ball possible, something inside him twisted. He grabbed the comforter and dragged it next to the couch. "Fine," he muttered, lying down beside the dog. But just for tonight. The moment he settled in, Shep slowly inched closer. Then, after what felt like forever, he let out a heavy sigh and rested his head near Ethan's arm. Ethan stared at the ceiling, exhaustion washing over him. He hadn't planned for this. He wasn't supposed to care this much. And yet, as Shep's breathing slowed and deepened, Ethan felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Peace. The next few weeks were full of trial and error. Shep was hesitant, often freezing up at sudden movements or unexpected noises. The sound of a passing garbage truck sent him scrambling under the table. The sight of a stranger on the sidewalk made his body tense, ready to bolt. Ethan learned patience. He learned to sit quietly beside Shep instead of forcing affection. He learned that leaving the leash on inside made the dog feel safer, like he had control. He learned that soft words and consistency mattered more than anything else. And in return, Shep started trusting him. The first time the shepherd wagged his tail, just a small, unsure movement, Ethan almost choked up. The first time Shep nudged his knee for attention, Ethan dropped everything he was doing and sat with him for hours. Little by little, the walls between them crumbled. One evening, Ethan sat on the couch, flipping through channels, when he felt something press against his side. Shep. For the first time, the dog had willingly come to him, laying his head on Ethan's lap with a deep sigh. Ethan's throat tightened. He reached down, running his fingers through Shep's fur. "You're really staying, huh?" Shep didn't move, just let out another soft sigh. Ethan smiled to himself. Somewhere along the way, this had stopped being about just fostering. This dog, this broken, abandoned soul was his now. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what Ethan had needed all along. Ethan never expected to rescue a dog that night. He never expected to take on the responsibility, the late nights, the slow healing process. But now, as Shep lay beside him, safe and warm, he realized something. Sometimes, the things we don't plan for are the things that save us the most. And sometimes, when we stop to save something broken, we end up saving ourselves too. Ethan never expected to rescue a dog that night. He never expected to take on the responsibility, the late nights, the slow healing process. But now, as Shep lay beside him, safe and warm, he realized something. Sometimes the things we don't plan for are the things that save us the most. And sometimes when we stop to save something broken, we end up saving ourselves too. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring content. Have you ever had an experience where an animal changed your life? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. And remember, sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change a life, maybe even your own. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.